Hi everybody, good morning. So I'm just coming on to show you how to make one of these Christmas cards. So this one I've done with embossing. So I've used an embossing folder to create the background effect. And then I've heat embossed this little fairy. So I'll show you how to do these techniques. So to start with, we need to get the die cutting machine. So this is a sizzix die cutting machine and it has a platform. So if you're using thin dies, you use the top layer, and if you're just using the big thick dies, you just use these plastic sheets, but you use the plastic sheets anyway with the platform. So I will show you what to do. So as I'm using the embossing folder, I will be using this platform. So what I do is put the platform down first, then one plastic sheet, and then the embossing folder that I'm using is the Christmas one. So I've already pre-cut the square that I want to use. So if I just line it up, make sure it's level, and then close it. And then put that on top of the plastic sheet, and then the other plastic sheet goes on top, so it sandwiches it together. And then just turn the handle. And that's it, so that's through. Right, so I'll just take that away for the moment, so I've finished with the die machine now. Right, so it's got a bit silver on for the previous thing that I embossed, but that doesn't matter, it just scratches off. Right, so that's that background ready. So next I'm going to use the a colour piece of card. So I'm going to stick with the blue, the same as on this one. So before I do that, actually, I'm going to get the paint out. So on here I use the pearly paints, and then I let it dry. It doesn't take long to dry, a few minutes. And then I went over with a bolder paint, so I didn't water it down as much, to go over some of the writing to create that effect, and it just makes the background stand out. So I'm going to use the same colour, so I'm going to use the blue. So you need a paintbrush and just a pot of water. And then because it's watercolour paint, you need the water to get the pigment mixed. And then just start bold at the edges. And then if you want to just fade it out, just add a bit more water and then just spread the paint out a bit. And then just keep going around the piece of paper until you've put enough paint on that you want going on. So I'm going to do this video in two parts. So the first part I'm going to do this, and then the second part I'm going to do the fairy with the heat embossing. Right, so that's all the paint that I'm going to put on. I'm just going to spread it around a little bit. I'm just going to make it a bit bolder than the previous card that I've made. So I've let that dry a little bit. I'm just going to get the blank cards. And then I've got a bit of ribbon, so I'm just going to use the Pritt stick and glue the back of it. Alright, it's going to stick that down the side of this card, the same as on the other one. Just make sure it's straight. Okay, so that's not bad. So I'm just going to trim the end bits of ribbon off. So if you wanted to, you can always add sentiments inside, like Happy Christmas, wishing you Happy Christmas and Happy New Year, anything like that, or just put with love or best wishes. Right, let's just move that back over there again so it doesn't get paint on it. Right, so I'm just going to go over a few of these words with the paint. So I'll just choose a few. Let's do festive. If you find you've got too much paint on the paintbrush, just knock it off a little bit. And go over the hoe. And then I think I'll go over greeting in the top corner. So it just adds a bit of extra detail to the background. And then instead of putting sentiment on the front, you can just go over like some of the wording, like greetings and Happy Christmas. And then it just gives that nice touch to it. There we go. What I'm going to do with that now is just plug the heat tool in. And just give it a quick dry. Okay. Right, so next I'm going to get the blue piece of paper, and then now that that's dry, I'm just going to turn it over and use the Pritt stick on the back to then glue it onto the piece of card. Let's just pop it into the corner. I'm going to leave a little bit of a border around the outside of it. just a thinnish border, and then just pat that down. That's it. So what I'm going to do next is get my cutting machine and then just trim round. Right, so that's not bad now. So that's ready to put onto the main cardstock. So I'm going to put this sort of in the middle, so just use the Pritt Stick again on the back. And then just put it in the centre between the ribbon, so it's equal between the ribbon and the edge of the cardstock. And just pass it down. That's it, so we're ready for part 2. So that was part 1 over with. Hi, so welcome back to part 2. So for part 2, I'm going to show you how to heat emboss this lovely fairy. So to start with, need another spare bit of watercolour paper, and I've got my acrylic block with my fairy already stuck on, and you need an embossing stamp pad which is clear. So what you do is just stamp the stamper onto the pad just to get all the product on. And then press that down onto the watercolour paper. So if you're using watercolour paints, always make sure that you use watercolour paper too, because it absorbs all the water and the watery paint. Right, so that's that on. So I'm just going to put a scrap piece of paper underneath to catch all the embossing powder. So this is the embossing powder that you use with the embossing pad. So what I'm going to do is just sprinkle on. And then just tip it up and tilt. And then just bang off any of the excess product that you've got on. And also you can use a paintbrush just to get rid of any of the excess. Just make sure your paintbrush is dry when you're doing it. And just be careful you don't knock any of the black off around your image. Well, on the actual image. That's it. So I'm happy with that. So just leave that over there a second while I just tip this back into the pot. So it's handy just having a plain piece of paper underneath, because you're not wasting any of the product then. Right, so put those over there. Right, so next I'm going to use the heat tool. So the heat tool just melts the embossing powder. So I'm going to start now with it. So as it starts heating up, you can see it it goes darker in colour, so the black goes more black once it's melted the powder. So as you can see, the top half's starting to melt now, compared to the colour of the bottom half where the skirt is. So always make sure that you've gone over all the embossing powder, because if the sun's still not melted with the heat, then it'll just come off when you're painting with it. I absolutely love heat embossing. Once first time I started it, I was like doing all my cards with it. I absolutely love heat embossing. Okay, so I think that's all of it that's melted. Yeah, and it gives you shiny, you might not be able to tell properly on the camera, but it gives a shiny finish to it as well. Right, so I'm just going to take my other watercolour palette and use the purple colour to do the fairy. So I need the water pot and the brush again. So when you're painting, make sure if you're using watercolour paints, make sure you've got a soft brush that you're using, because if you've got a hard bristle brush, the paint doesn't go on the paper as good. Right, so just going to start with the wings. So this is just a quick demo. You can spend longer on it, but for this purpose, I'm just going to do it quite quickly. If you want to do the fairy or whatever you decide to do, a couple of colours, then feel free. So it's just going to take some of the pink now, just to do her flesh. Okay. I might just go down the side with a little bit of the blue just to blend that in, and then it can blend in with the background as well. Okay, so that's that done. So I'm just going to try with the heat tool again. Right, so now that that's dry, I'm just going to leave a little border around the fairy as I'm cutting. And then when I come to stick her on the card, I'm going to use some double-sided foam tape so it the main image is raised off the card. Just to give the impression of a 3D kind of effect. Okay, so that's roughly just quickly cut out. So I'm going to place her around here. So just, you can get the foam pads, you can get the small ones, or you can get the foam that's on the roll. I prefer the one that's on the roll so you can cut it to whatever size you want it then. So I'm just going to dot some about. So once you've stuck that on, just peel the back of the tape off. And then just position it onto the cards. So I'm going to move it up slightly compared to the other one that I've made. And then there we go. One emboss card finished. All right, thank you for watching. I'll see you later on with another video. Take care. Bye bye.